taxpayers in this last biennium, the total budget was about $80 billion. Of that $80 billion, about 55–56% goes to education. About 3/4 of that goes to public education, and 1/4 goes to higher education.
Right. Our next question for you guys is, what are the new technologies in regards to natural gas and its production and use? And we're going to have Ms. Lyon start us off.
Well, I'll answer mostly about transportation and engines because that's the area that I focus on, and then I'll let you guys help from a production perspective and other. But when we started really getting serious about this from a transportation perspective about 3 years ago, there was only one consumer vehicle, and that's the Honda Civic natural gas. It's been designated the cleanest vehicle in the United States for the last 8 years. It beats all electric vehicles by the way they measure it. And you measure it from well to wheels. So that's a great vehicle as a success story, but we don't have any others out there. And the reason for that is we've had inconsistent prices over several years, and it takes auto manufacturers a long time to invest. We've worked hard, and we have 3 new trucks. We have vans out now. We have 3 new trucks. All the major players from Detroit are providing trucks. F-250, I drove over here today. I drive a truck that's got a 22-gallon equivalent cylinder on it for natural gas, and I also have a small 8-gallon gasoline tank if I need it. But Ford, Chevy, and Chrysler are all producing those. You can go into your dealership and drive them. You can go, and the amount of Honda Civics has expanded too. There's, I believe, 10 in the general area here, going from Burleson to all around the DFW. They're supposed to keep 2 in stock at all times, so if you wanted to go in and drive one of those, you can test drive that. I know at TCU, and Dr. Ken Morgan drives one. So we have a lot of people driving. We're converting our vehicles ourselves to run on them. So where those are kind of new, what's not new is the big trucks, the 18-wheelers you see on the road. The only thing that has enough energy to move an 18-wheeler right now is natural gas. So you're not going to see an electric truck or something like that. They just don't have the power right now. Now, they could, and I think we should keep looking into all those options. But today, that's our only option. So Peterbilt Trucks, which is headquartered in Denton, Texas, is a great example of a company that knows how to build a truck like that. So we've recently purchased 17 of their trucks that are going to run on CNG. So that's an existing technology that's just really taking off, and more people are buying them. We are also investing in home refueling stations. That's something that the technology is a little dated. We're working on it, to be honest. We've got improvements to make, but just think how nice that is. Just the same thing people like about the idea of electric cars, being able to plug in. Think about, you've got that natural gas line that goes up right to your house for your stove, your dryers. So people's dryers run on natural gas. You can do that overnight. I'm going to have one of those put into my garage soon. You were talking a little bit about the whole Beverly Hills thing. People rightly have concerns when it comes to things with energy. Things get hot. They have power, which is why we need them in the first place. I know people in Highland Park that have these natural gas stations already in theirs. So you know that these people have done their due diligence, and that the Highland Park areas would not allow those to be in there to blow up all the neighbors if this, it hadn't been, the safety hadn't been looked into. So these are the kind of things that makes you feel really good that the technology is coming along, and that Chesapeake just made a huge investment in home refueling stations. So GE, with GE, other groups that are trying to get into it, Whirlpool, other people, it's an appliance, just like any other kind of appliance. So those are the kind of technologies that we're looking at right now, as well as I mentioned earlier, the natural gas rigs, Caterpillar engines, any combustion engine can run on natural gas. So there's a lot of increased technology every day. That the phone never stops ringing. Everything from Burlington Northern up with their locomotives that want to look into it more. The amount of investment and technology development in those areas continues.
And I think that regardless of the home fueling option or availability right now, Arlington provides that option. They have there at the Valero station at Division and Stadium has a CNG pump there now. And so I don't know exactly why that location was picked, but I have a feeling it had something to do with Cowboy Stadium, and there's a lot of taxi cabs and different service vehicles that run on CNG because of the cost savings for the fuel.
The wind coaches, the coach buses that are the bus of the Dallas Cowboys, those run on natural gas.
And I know to expand on that, that the city has just approved some site plans for a new natural gas fueling station at 20 and I believe in New York, around that area right there. So it is growing. We're seeing more of those come in. They're being taken one at a time and looked at, but no different than in the gas station.
We have 50 natural gas fueling stations in Texas right now. And as a Texan, I'm going to tell you, I'm a bit embarrassed that New York has 100 and we've got 50. And we're the #1 producer of natural gas. I mean, this is the kind of thing we got to look at, guys. This is right here in our backyard. This is our opportunity. So, but the good news is we doubled that last year. There were less than that at one point. And I'm confident that we're going to double. By this time next year, we'll have over 100 in the state.
Even Oklahoma did
Oh, no, not quite.
it. Not quite.
They got, yeah, they are. They got 72. You're right. Yep, we're fifth. California's got 270. New York's got 100. Utah 84. Oklahoma 72, and Texas 50. We don't like being fifth, do we, guys?
And your question was, what was the question?
The question was, what are the new technologies in regards to
Oh. Well, I'll just jump to the other end, the actual drilling and production side. I mean, of course, technology permeates the whole oil and gas industry now, and I know it's easy for people to still think about that an oil or gas drilling rig, when somebody says that, you get into your mind this derrick with men slinging chains, and they have oil dripping off of them, and it's kind of a dirty looking picture. And that's just not, you know, maybe that was true decades ago, but it certainly isn't true now. It's, the whole industry is technology driven. And in fact, the drilling rigs that operate, and certainly the ones that operate around here, are all highly computerized and robotic controlled. And when I've visited a lot of these rigs, and it always amazes me to walk into the control room and see the driller sitting in a big, out of easy chair kind of thing with a couple of 42-inch screens up with all kinds of graphics going on, a couple of joysticks he's got. But really, you know, the computer is doing a lot of that drilling. It's hard work, and I'm not trying to denigrate what goes on those drilling rigs. It is, there's still a lot of hard work that goes on. But my point is that it's technology that has enabled the major leaps forward that we're enjoying now. And it really comes down to these shales, the two technologies that came together to make it happen were horizontal drilling, which is exactly what it sounds like, and hydraulic fracturing. And it's the combination of the two that has made extraction of natural gas and oil from shales possible. And really the credit for bringing these two technologies together is still given to George Mitchell, who started Mitchell Energy Company out of Houston, and was really, he's now the grandfather of the Barnett Shale. He is the person who actually drilled the first well into the Barnett Shale in 1981, and then spent years and millions of his own dollars to try to figure out how to get the gas to come out of the shale. Rusty said a few minutes ago at the beginning, when you drill one of these wells, nothing comes out of it. When you drill it, the gas doesn't come out. It has to be hydraulically fractured to get the gas to come out. So those two technologies have been, I guess, referred to as the game changer. In other words, when those two came together, the energy picture in the world changed tremendously. And we went from a world that where people were talking about peak oil and peak natural gas, in other words, saying, we peaked. There isn't any more. We're on the downhill decline to a point now where we're not talking about that anymore.
In fact, every day seems to bring new discoveries. So technology has been what has really changed things.
Our next question is, how does natural gas affect North Texas? And this is really for everyone. But I'll let Mr. Ironwood start.
Well, this whole area has been had a tremendous positive economic impact because of the Barnett Shale. And as I said earlier, that's really the first shale to be discovered. As I say that, I mean, geologists have known that the shale has been there for a long time, but getting the gas out of it has really only been 10 years. I mean, that's what, there was a recent economic study, and it was called the Barnett Shale, A Decade of Drilling. So it really hasn't been going on very long. But in those 10 years, just that short period of time, the economic impact on this area has been tremendous. There was a study released just last year in September by an economic research group called the Pyramid Group, and they said that in these 10 years, and where we are now is over 100,000 jobs have been created, and that will continue. $11 billion a year is injected just into the North Texas economy from this activity. And the Pyramid Group also said that over this 10-year period, 38.5% of the growth that has taken place here is as a result of the Barnett Shale activity. That's a big number. And so when you look at the impact of that, you see a lot of very positives that this area has continued to grow during a period when there is a nationwide recession. And the opportunities have, in fact, I think in the last couple of years, Dallas, for example, the population has grown 1% or something like that, and Fort Worth is, I can't remember the number, but it's a much, much bigger number. Fort Worth is growing much faster than Dallas, and of course a lot is involved in that. But one thing in this area, Fort Worth being the center of the Barnett Shale activity, is that the opportunities, the economic opportunities, have been tremendous. And when I talk about jobs, and everybody, I think, can weigh in on this, but we're not just talking about the being on the drilling of the rig out there. The jobs ripple throughout the economy. And so it's not only the workers on the rig, but it's lawyers, accountants, title analysts, restaurants, hotels, car lots. I mean, just go on and on and on. When you have a source of economic activity like we have here in the Barnett Shale, it ripples throughout the economy. And so the economic benefits have been positive and will continue to be positive because these wells are going to last for decades.
And to expand on that, I think that the jobs generated are immense for oil and gas production. And I think I know, well, for Chesapeake alone, we hire about 300 people a week, and that's typically out of our corporate campus in Oklahoma City to work on the shale plays across the United States. Whereas some of that activity is dwindling here in the North Texas area, it's being spread across our nation. And like Ed said, I mean, it's all across the board. It's highly technical jobs, looking at skills in science and technology and geology and mapping. So graduates graduating with GIS skills and with all different technological capabilities as well as soft skills, social media, networking opportunities, working on the demand side to increase the the use of natural gas, since the supply is, speaks for itself when you look at the map up here. You also have to look at the jobs generated by the economic input that Ed talked about. You have school districts who are benefiting from the royalties that are able to keep teachers on staff or hire more teachers in light of some of the cutbacks that we've seen in education. You have churches that benefit from the royalties as well, that are able to expand their capacity and their room and their employees as well. So I think that when you talk about how the Barnett Shale or natural gas has affected the North Texas area, specifically Arlington and specifically UTA, you can talk about many, many positive aspects that it's created in terms of the economic benefit, the specific mailbox money that we might talk about in terms of those who benefit directly from the royalties, as well as the amount of tax dollars that are put back into this area that help cities do the things that they need to do and have surpluses. What is it, $5 million surplus for the city of Arlington right now that I think you can arguably say the natural gas industry helped generate. So it's certainly one of the things that I like to talk about most, and something that my job gives me the ability to do, talk about all the benefits of natural gas. And I don't think it stops here, and I don't think it stops there. I think we have many years ahead of us looking at the increase in technology and the new discovery of shale formations and unconventional natural gas formations around the United States. And I think the demand for natural gas will help continue that exploration and production.
One thing I would add too is that, I want to mention the Barnett Shale was the first shale to be developed, and with all those others that you're looking at on the map, a lot of the drilling activity has moved from the Barnett Shale to these other areas. And in part, that's because some of these other areas produce more oil than we do in the Barnett Shale. And right now, oil, relative to natural gas, is more valuable. So companies are less looking for just that natural gas and more for oil, so they're going to some of these other places. That will change as prices adjust again and natural gas prices drift back up. But a lot of the activity or the companies that provide services to these other areas are headquartered in this area. And the city of Fort Worth, the mayor and the Chamber of Commerce and others, are calling Fort Worth the shale energy capital of shale energy capital. And the point is that a lot of the companies that work all over the United States are either headquartered here or have offices here. And so one I visited just a few weeks ago that's here, had recently relocated to be in the Fort Worth area, is FracTech. They're now moving internationally, so they're calling it FT International. And but FracTech is a service company. They're the company that after the well is drilled, they show up with their equipment to hydraulically fracture the well and make it work. And FracTech is growing. They've only been around, I think, something like 8 years, and they've gone from 2 employees to thousands. And they couldn't get enough equipment fast enough to satisfy their growth needs, so they started making their own equipment. So they have a facility in Aledo where they make pumps and make their own pumps. They assemble their own trucks. They have 400 people that work out there. It's a factory, and they're making this equipment not only now for themselves but for other companies. So they're very rapidly becoming a huge employer, and they send their employees all over the United States and now all over the world with their equipment, and they go to the other areas in the United States, let's say, and not only do they perform their service, They train locals. They train a local population to do that, and then they have a job, and then they can come back here or go to another part of the country. So even though a lot of this activity has moved elsewhere in the United States, the benefits are still, and a lot of the jobs are still moving in this area.
On the municipal side, when you look at it, when we receive permits in from city council, when we get an application that comes in, there's multiple jobs. I know a lot of students in here might be looking at this thinking, well, it's not just the engineering and Gasville side of it. We have city planners, we have GIS specs, we have computer guys that get in there and that they create all the maps, they do a website for the city. There are so many multiple aspects of jobs that are affected by the natural gas side of things. Just on looking over permits and implementing these things into the everyday use, that it wouldn't be the same without that here. So it has affected. Look, I got a job. That's all I do is natural gas all day long. I wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't here. So there are jobs that are sprouting up that, if not specifically for, it has some sort of effective use because of it.
All right, great. At this time, we're going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions that anyone may have. We're going to ask that everybody keep it to one question for the sake of time. And if you'd like to line up right here at this hall, if you have a question, come on and ask it. No questions?
This will stand up. You mentioned that some cars are are starting to use CNG, right? My question is very simple. Let's say I have a truck with a 20-gallon tank, and instead of filling it up with gasoline, let's say it runs 100 miles with on 20 miles of gasoline. Will it run the same distance with CNG?
We measure it and distribute it in gasoline gallon equivalents. So yes, that's all based on the BTU, but it's, when you're dealing with the difference, challenges, it does take up more space having the compressed natural gas than it does the gasoline tank. So one of the challenges, the most expensive part of a natural gas vehicle is that tank. They're solid, they're steady, but they're larger than your gasoline tanks. So typically when you do a conversion, you just add another tank. So you've got your existing tank and you add a new one. It's just the point of adding that new one. But once you do gasoline gallon equivalent, you'll get the same range that you get for gasoline because it's all based on British thermal units or the amount of power that's there.
Add quickly to that, I just this morning happened to catch that today on CNBC was CNG Day. So all day, I suppose I didn't see it, but I did catch the first clip this morning. Their reporter, Rick Santelli, was somewhere in Oklahoma at a facility where they convert natural gas, convert vehicles to natural gas. And he was showing how simple it is. In fact, he said they were going to convert this pickup truck from gasoline to gasoline and natural gas in 3 hours and 50 minutes. And he had all the equipment laid out. It really wasn't all that much. It was the tank and a line and a harness that was added on top of the injectors that are already there.
And that's why there's so many all over the world, because it is so easy to convert. However, the only thing I don't want to mislead people with, it's not that easy to get it approved here. The EPA is very strict about the rules about it. It can take a year to get approval from the EPA. So while technically it's not hard to do from a permitting perspective and all other things, we're working on it. We're working on it to increase the visibility of how easy it is and the safety involved.
And I think that's why, since the answer to your question is yes, the equivalent is there. The cars coming straight from the manufacturers that are run on CNG are so attractive because the tanks are built in and they're designed for that. And so you don't lose any of the trunk space or the back of your truck space by adding another tank. They're incorporated into the design of the vehicle.
Any other student questions?
What about like in long run in environmental, consequences as a result of just killing natural gas? Is there any concern for that?
Well, I'll answer that because we looked at that here. There's a national debate going on now, and I think the debate's healthy. I mean, I encourage it. There are people that are vehemently opposed to the production of natural gas, and I think they should have a voice. I think the industry has its own voice, and I think anything that you guys do to get involved as educated consumers would only help the process along. Now, we came to the conclusion here that when I was at UTA that this project was safe for UTA. There's people that disagree with us. But I think that the debate that we're having nationally is a good thing. In my opinion, I'll give you an opinion that's certainly not Carrizo, it's my opinion. But I think the current debate about who's going to regulate fracking, for example. Let me back up a minute. When I came to UTA, I had a really nice boss. He was really good at giving me these little pithy sayings. And he told me one time, don't ever get in the middle of a piss fight between two stumps, because you're going to get dirty. Well, what's going on right now is there is a huge debate going on about who should regulate fracking. One side says the EPA should do it, the other side says the state should do it. I personally think the state should do it because they have the most experience doing it, but there's other people that disagree with that. I think that debate's healthy. I think when that is settled, I think a lot of this will go away.
And I think I'll add to that. I think that, Chesapeake supports that, and they support the improvements in the technology that allow for safe hydraulic fracturing in the area, and that when it's done correctly, it is done in a way to protect any groundwater or any contamination from any environmental issues. And I think that the 10 years of experience that we've had here in the Barnett Shale prove that and support that. And I think that you have to analyze the specifics in the certain areas, because this map that Ed provided in the 48 states that are shown here, the geological formations and the different specifics of each shale play contribute to the technology and what's used and what's done in the area to explore for the natural gas. And so I think that you have to take into account what those specifics are, and you have to look at them in that general area. You cannot apply maybe what's happening in the Northeast to what's happening here in the Barnett Shale, or to what's happening in Louisiana or Ohio or California. And I think based on that, the states are in a very good position to be able to know what's happening in that specific area and regulate it appropriately. And you have to remember that this is not new technology. Fracking has been around since the 50s and has been used. Now, combining with horizontal drilling in the last 10 years, it's changed, and over those 10 years, I know the increase in the technology has opened up the ability to access more of this domestic fuel source that you have, either natural gas or oil. But I think to answer your question, that if done correctly, that the protections in place will prevent any of those environmental concerns.
And the other thing, I love seeing students out asking great questions, because I work in an industry where you didn't hear me brag about how many years I've been here, because there's so many people in my company that have worked there 25, 30 years, and I feel so fortunate to work with such. I feel like sometimes that people could sit down and work with the people that I work with every day. They have a very different opinion. These guys are so serious about safety. They're concerned about the safety of their workers. Safety permeates everything we do at our company. And these guys have spent their whole life looking for energy and finding better ways to get it to the consumers. So I get that opportunity to see that, but not everybody else does. And we haven't always been the best at being transparent. So we're trying to make moves in that direction. Things like frackfocus.org, if you guys want to go out there, it's a new thing that has went live recently, where we are, every well we do, we're putting every chemical we put in there. You can go out and see. We've always tracked that and shared it with the appropriate regulatory groups, but now you can go out if you know of something that's in your area And these are the kind of things we're trying to do to improve our communication and to be more transparent. But like I said, when you work inside, you really are impressed with how much these people really care. And like I said, they spend their whole life doing it. There's a lot of people that spend their whole careers, 25, 30 more years, doing these things, who have worked, and a lot of times that's in one specific area. They get to know the Permian Basin, or they get to know the Barnett. That's all they do. The rest of their lives is try to figure out how to safely and efficiently get that energy out of the ground and to the consumers that need it.
I think we're on the, as far as the city's concerned, we're on that, we're on the opposite side of the producers and the operators, due to the fact that we have to balance everything off of what's best for the city. And what we do is we have a great working relationship with each of the operators. I know Laura and I talk all the time on what permits are coming up, what situations are happening. And we get some of the best citizens around. We have some that are seriously concerned. They want to come in, they want to talk about it. We sit down with them, we go over every situation. There are aspects that they bring to our attention that we go out, we research, we look at. And we contact the operators, we contact professors, we contact all around the country trying to find the best solution, the best understanding. And each time we're always met with a great attitude and working relationship. And that kind of goes to you guys. I mean, when you have questions, and you have concerns, I mean, we're here at the city to try to answer that. We're the liaison between the operators and between the citizens. So when there's a concern, feel free to call us. That's what we're there for. We're here to help as much as we are to regulate and to inspect.
But you don't have to say you're called to call in for concerns. You can always call in and tell him how much you appreciate the city for supporting natural gas. And I think that the more positive rhetoric that we can hear about it, I certainly appreciate the opportunity and the forum tonight to be able to discuss this, because Rusty's right, debate is healthy. And we want to make sure that both sides of the debate are heard. Chesapeake has really stepped up our social media networking recently, and we encourage you to go and like us on Facebook. I brought some cards, and hopefully you'll pick some up at the table. To follow us on Twitter, and to like us on Facebook, and to make comments as you see fit on those. But give Colin a call and say something positive. Actually, say 2 things positive for every negative thing.
You may be on the phone for a while.
One other thing that came to mind in the debate Rusty was talking about, early on in the Barnett Shale activity, the question arose about air quality or air emissions from Barnett Shale operations. And in response to that, the TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, has placed a number of permanent air monitoring stations around in the concentrated areas of natural gas facilities, such as Eagle Mountain Lake in Dish, Texas, and Decatur, Flower Mound, another one recently in South Fort Worth. And these air monitoring stations are all over the place. I think there are 7 in Barnett Shale now, and they plan to double that number. So they're going to keep adding these stations, but my point is you can do your own research. You can go to the TCEQ website, just do a search once you're there on AutoGC, AUTOGC, stands for Automatic Gas Chromatograph, and that's what these stations are called. And they monitor the air 24 hours a day, and you can see it online. You can pick the station, you go there, you can see what chemical compounds are being measured. And what you will find there, if you do comparisons, is that the air around the natural gas facilities is really the same or no different, and in some cases cleaner than the air, let's say in Dallas, where they have an air monitoring station, and there aren't any natural gas wells. So you can do your own research, and what you will see is that actually the air that we have in this area of Arlington, Fort Worth, and in surrounding areas is really what they call just the components of it are at ambient levels. In other words, it's kind of the same air structure of air that you would find in any metropolitan area.
And then just to expand on that, I know that we got some side plans that came in to put some of those auto GCs here in the city of Arlington. So those are about to get a lot closer to us, and so you'll be able to look those things up on the TCQ's website and specifically look in this area.
Well, I believe, in fact, UTA received a grant from TCQ to monitor and manage a couple of these new stations.
Any more questions?
I have one for Mr. Ireland. Dr. E. Berman said that with the natural gas, it's not 100 years. There might be 100 reserve, but the economically extractable is around 25 years. But if we ramp up our demand, it's really only 12 years. He talks about a hyperbolic decline curve. Can you tell us why he feels we only have a 12-year supply if we ramp up our natural gas demand?
Well, Arthur Berman is head of, his organization is called something like the Peak Oil and Gas Research. I don't remember the name, but he is the man when it comes to peak oil and peak natural gas. That's just his thing. And so all of his research and his conclusions are always come to the same conclusion, which is that in his opinion, natural gas reserves in the United States are being overstated. And so that's been looked at by a lot of people, a lot of companies that conduct these, the analysis of reserves. And by the way, when companies state, when oil and gas companies state what their oil and gas reserves are, it's not their own estimate. They are required by the Securities and Exchange Commission to hire third-party companies, engineering companies that come in and do those evaluations. So you're correct in saying that Art Berman comes to conclusions very different than almost everyone else in the industry, but I think he's found a source of employment in the conclusions that he comes to. So the vast majority, I mean, I would say essentially everybody else does not come to that conclusion.
Hyperbolic decline curve for the Barnett Shale, is that like a 5% per month average?
Well, there is a hyperbolic decline curve that's well known for Barnett Shale wells, that they do decline rapidly. They tend to decline rapidly in the first couple of years and then level out. And in fact, I looked at, there are a little over 16,000 wells, natural gas wells, that have been drilled in the United States. I'm sorry, in the Barnett Shale, 16,000 wells in the Barnett Shale. And almost all of them that have been drilled are still producing. In fact, the very first natural gas well is the C.W. Slay #1, and it's in southeastern Wise County, and it's still producing. It was drilled in 1981. So yes, these wells decline, but once they decline in the first couple of years, they tend to level out and be almost flat. They just continue to produce. And as technology improves, the operators will, I'm sure, be going back into some of these wells to rework them over time. And while the original estimates were that these wells could produce 40 or 50 years, that may be an understatement. They produce a lot longer than that. Because again, as I said earlier, it's technology driven.
I think I can speak for Laura and Chesapeake and all the other producers. If our executives and stuff really believe that we didn't have this surplus, we wouldn't be seeing $2 gas prices right now. I mean, our executives would love nothing better than to go to Wall Street and say, we've got something that's rare that no one else has, and why don't you pump the price up? So when you know that, there's a lot of research that's went into this. We're all of our executives, we work together, and we're very clear about this surplus. It's something we're managing as an industry.
Well, one other thing I'll throw in is that the drilling activity in the Barnett Shale peaked in September of 2008. So now that's a long time ago in the scheme of things. So since then, drilling in the Barnett Shale has been declining. Actual production from Barnett Shale wells hit a new high just 3 months ago. So while the drilling has been slowing down tremendously, production has continued to improve. So yes, these wells decline, but what is happening is the technology that's bringing in new wells is so much better than the technology just 10 years ago that new wells are much more productive. And I guess we call it monster wells. We're seeing more monster wells come in the last few years than we've ever seen.
And I can speak on behalf of Chesapeake that Arlington is what we call this part of the sweet spot of the Barnett Shale. The production of natural gas is some of the highest here in Arlington, and they have them called monster wells, and some of Chesapeake's largest wells are here in Arlington. And so we certainly hope to continue to drill more monster wells here in Arlington, especially once the price of natural gas rebounds.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for coming. We're going to go ahead and end here. So if we could all give them a round of applause.